During an interview this morning on the Fox Propaganda Network, a desperate top Trump advisor spread a shameless, despicable lie that Democrats support infanticide, forcing the Fox News host herself to shut him down on live TV. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to look at in this video. The main one is from Fox News Sunday, which is kind of the premier flagship full interview program. It's basically like Fox's version of 60 Minutes. And as far as Fox programs go, it's actually pretty good. Shannon Bream took over from Chris Wallace. She's not as good as Chris Wallace, but she usually interviews a Republican and a Democrat, and usually they ask tough questions of both sides. In this particular case, the Republican she's interviewing is Corey Lewandowski, somebody who has been increasingly featured on our videos or in our videos here at Pondering Politics, because he is a disgraced, infamous Trump advisor who was part of the 2016 campaign. And in desperation, Donald Trump brought him back to the 2024 campaign because basically his entire ethos is let Donald Trump be Trump. Basically, let Trump do whatever Trump's lizard brain instincts compel him to do, and don't try to tame him, don't try to direct him, don't try to guide him. Just let Trump be Trump. So he's been making the rounds on behalf of the Trump campaign as one of their top surrogates. And during the course of this interview on Fox News Sunday, he spread a very common lie coming out of the MAGA Republican movement, which is really despicable about the Democratic Party. We're going to play the full clip, including the part at the end where Shannon Bream has to shut him down during this interview.
The president, by the way, is making a lot of news this week on the issues of abortion, of IVF, so I want to talk about that. Here's what he told our Brian Yennis Friday about how pro-lifers who are increasingly publicly and privately talking about their frustrations. Here's what the president told Brian Yennis.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think they feel betrayed at all. They love me. I'm the one that got rid of Roe v. Wade.
But here's what one prominent pro-life activist, Lila Rose, told Politico. She says, I think it's foolish what he's doing. It's politically unwise. It may cost him the election, and it's morally unprincipled as well. Right now, it's all about turnout. If he wants to galvanize his base, he needs to stop trying to pander to Kamala Harris's base because they're never going to vote for him anyway. She says no one owns the pro-life vote. She says, listen, she doesn't think a bunch of people are going to go vote for Harris, but she may stay home. She's telling other people to stay home. In a race this tight, can you afford to offend that constituency?
Well, look, if she chooses to stay home, then by, tacit endorsement, she's supporting Kamala Harris, who has had a radical position on the issue of abortion. Many Democrats believe that you can have an abortion not only up until the last week, but also in some cases after the baby's been born. What Donald Trump has said was, let's have the states decide. They are the laboratories of democracy. Let's turn this back. And that's what Roe v. Wade really did. And so we see across this country right now opportunities for individuals to go and vote at the ballot box of what they want to see transpire in their state. And every state is going to look a little different. And Shannon, we have seen some relatively or very conservative states go to a position where women are giving opportunities that you would not have expected because of that. But those states understand, whether it's Ohio or Kansas, that women have the opportunity to make their own decisions, and the states are allowing that to happen. So what Donald Trump has done, and I think by and large the American people support this, is Roe v. Wade has been overturned because of his 3 Supreme Court nominees that are now sitting on the bench, and they've put it back to the states, and it's a decision at the local level now.
Well, and I will say that to be clear, in a number of states, there is abortion allowed through pregnancy, and that includes a measure that Governor Tim Walz signed in Minnesota. But Democrats say they absolutely disavow the idea of infanticide or of a baby that does survive an abortion, somehow their life being taken at that point. We can continue that debate because there are a number of states that do allow it through pregnancy. But I think everybody agrees infanticide is illegal and wrong.
So it's pretty sad that is, certainly nowhere near as firm as it could have been. Kind of disappointing, quite frankly, from Shannon Bream, but also given that she's a Fox propagandist, and clearly somebody who prefers Trump to Biden, the fact that she pushed back on this at all is something I think that's notable. But it's also a sign of desperation from Lewandowski here. And even his answer, I'm not entirely sure is going to win people over. So what they're referring to is something that we've talked about on this, on the show, on at least a couple of videos yesterday and the day before, which is that Donald Trump has been flip-flopping on the issue of abortion. And it's so interesting because, of course, Republicans complain that Vice President Harris is a flip-flopper when it comes to, policy prescriptions on fracking. In 2019, she wanted to ban fracking. And now in 2024, she opposes a ban on fracking. And Fox propagandists and conservative commentators and MAGA Republicans are saying, oh, how dare she change her position for whatever reason in 5 years? Well, Donald Trump has been flip-flopping on the issue of abortion, which is much more personal to people than fracking, in a matter of hours. And so, again, just kind of want to unpack this. Donald Trump signaled, as Shannon Bream discussed, that he was going to vote against, as a Florida resident, basically a 6-week abortion ban, that he was going to vote in favor of a ballot referendum that would basically guarantee the right to an abortion in Florida for about 24 weeks, okay, up until at least the point of viability. Right now, under Governor Ron DeSantis, there's a 6-week abortion ban. Trump recognizes that he's vulnerable on this issue. He appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices, which overturned Roe v. Wade. It's created enormous political backlash for the Republican Party and for Trump in particular. He is responsible for it. He's also tried to take credit for it repeatedly and publicly when he's trying to appeal to evangelical Christians and evangelical Republicans and the pro-life movement. Then, when it's inconvenient for him, like in razor-close elections where he's losing suburban women, well, then he has to distance himself from it. So he constantly contradicts himself. So he signaled that he would vote again, or he would vote in favor of this constitutional amendment, basically overriding the very strict 6-week abortion ban in Florida. Then, as Shannon Bream points out, well, prominent MAGA Republican pro-lifers started to revolt. How dare you? You betrayed us. And then, of course, Donald Trump walked it back. And I want to play this clip because it's probably going to appear in another video that we talk about, because there's so much to unpack to this.
More time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
So you see where Corey Lewandowski got the lie from. He's basically regurgitating Donald Trump's lie that, Democrats in so many states, they not only allow abortion up until the 9-month, they let you give birth to the child, go from fetus to baby, and then they perform some sort of post-birth abortion. It's infanticide. It's also a lie. It's not true. Okay, which is why Shannon Bream fact-checked Corey Lewandowski during that interview. But his logic is, I'm not going to vote to override a 6-week abortion ban in this constitutional amendment because of what may go on in other states, which doesn't go on in other states. He's lying about it. But even his answer, even if you take everything he says at face value, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Trump knows he's vulnerable on this issue. That's why Lewandowski got desperate. That's why Lewandowski said, well, listen, if you don't vote for us, then I guess you endorse, post-birth abortions, infanticide. That's what he's telling Trump supporters who have principled objections to Trump's stance on abortion. Fine, you don't vote for us. That's fine. If you're a pro-lifer who doesn't support Donald Trump, then you must actually be the most radical pro-choicer out there. It's really strange. I don't imagine that that's going to endear pro-life activists. I call them pro-forced birth activists because that's what many of them are. They care only about forcing women to gestate pregnancies against their will and then care nothing about what happens to the mother, to the child, to the family after birth. But he's trying basically to shame them into voting for Trump. I don't think it's going to be particularly persuasive. The New York Times, by the way, has talked about how abortion has at times been a very salient issue, particularly in the post-Roe v. Wade, post-Dobbs decision, the Dobbs decision being the Supreme Court decision which overturned Roe v. Wade, how it's been very prominent in election seasons, but the polls indicate for the past several months that it was dropping on the list of priorities. Well, now this op-ed or this expose from the New York Times is talking about actually how very recent polls are indicating that it's climbing back up as we get closer to the election. More voters, especially women, now say abortion is their top issue. Trump is shifting his stance on reproductive rights, but voters, by a wide margin, say they trust Kamala Harris on the issue. Attitudes on abortion are deeply entrenched and have motivated voters across the American political landscape for decades. But in a post-Roe world with abortion access sharply limited or at stake in several states, voters who want to protect abortion rights are increasingly energized. And I should say, as far as grim statistics, 1/3 of America's women live under a very restrictive abortion ban. Okay, 1/3. That is millions, tens of millions. And that could be a decisive issue for the election. Although the economy remains the number one issue for voters, a growing share of voters in swing states now say that abortion is central to their decision this fall, according to the New York Times Siena College polls earlier this month. This represents an increase since May, when President Biden was still the Democratic presidential nominee. And by a wide margin, more say they trust Vice President Harris over Donald Trump to handle abortion. This may be the case for women, particularly now that Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket. For women younger than 45, abortion has overtaken the economy as the single most important issue to their vote. It's important, folks. Women outnumber men in this country. Women voters outnumber male voters in this country. And women more reliably vote than men. So Donald Trump, who is already outnumbered, remember, as I've said before, I'll say it again. You need to understand that even though they want you to believe that they represent the majority, they don't. The Trump coalition has never represented the voting majority in this country. They've always been outnumbered by anti-Trump voters and the anti-Trump coalition. So Donald Trump is particularly vulnerable here. And that's why he's flailing. That's why Lewandowski is flailing. And that's why they're making these stupid rhetorical mistakes, hoping to scare people into voting against the Democrats. I doubt it's going to work. Democrats enjoy such a colossal advantage on this issue. I can't imagine how Trump could do anything to really even blunt or reduce the gap between he and Harris on this issue. What could he possibly say? He appointed the three Supreme Court justices which overturned Roe v. Wade. As a resident of Florida, he had the opportunity to demonstrate how much of a moderate he claims to be when it's convenient, of course, by saying, you know what? I'm going to exercise my right to vote in this state against a 6-week draconian abortion ban, which is what he signaled he would do. Then he got pushback and they said, no, I'm not going to do it, showing that he's an unprincipled loser. And by the way, a flip-flopper to a far greater extent than Vice President Kamala Harris. So I don't know, again, what their strategy is. It doesn't seem to be working. It just seems to be pure panic. And even though it's not nearly as firm as it should have been, I do appreciate that even a Fox News host felt the need to push back on his blatant lie about Democrats and infanticide. And in the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.